He couldn't look me in the face. He knew what he had just done to me, and he knew how much I was hurt. But how could he not do this? My best friend since third grade, best man at my wedding. Brandon knew me inside and out. To make it easier for him, I said, "Relax, buddy, we're not cutting off messenger heads anymore. Are you sure she didn't see you?" "I don't think she saw, but am I sure?" "No, I can't say I'm sure. I saw her as soon as I walked through the door and turned to approach her. And when I saw her kissing a guy, I turned around and found a dark corner to sit down. If she saw me, she wouldn't show it. My best friend just told me that my wife is cheating on me. He called me at work and asked me to meet him for a drink after work. As soon as I saw his face, I knew something was bothering him. And I knew Brandon well enough to know that it wouldn't do me any good if I started right there and asked him what was wrong. He exhausted himself until he could say it. All I could do was wait. It took about 5 minutes of small talk and beer sipping before he finally got down to business. "Rob, I'm damn sorry that I'm the one telling you this, but Barb is cheating on you." I wanted to jump up and scream at him, No, damn it, you're wrong." But I knew that wasn't the case. He had known Barb as long as I had, so it was unlikely he would have seen anyone else and mistaken her for Barb. I asked him how he knew, and he told me the story. He went on a blind date as a favor to his sister, and, unsurprisingly, at least for him, the date turned out to be a disaster. He dropped the girl off at her apartment and decided that he needed something stronger to drink. He was in an unfamiliar part of the city, so he decided to go to the first bar he came across. He walked through the door of the establishment and saw Barb leaving the dance floor with some guy. They walked up to a booth along the wall, and just before he sat down, he saw Barb kiss the guy passionately. Surprised, he found a place to sit and watch, and for the next hour, he watched Barb and the guy drink, dance, and make out in a booth. When they danced, they both pressed themselves against each other, and the guy's hands were all over her. When they stood up to leave, he gave them a minute and then stood up and followed them out of the bar. He saw them get into the back seat of the car, and after a minute, Barb's head was out of sight, and the guy leaned his head back on the seat. Brandon didn't try to get close enough to look into the car, but he was sure of what Barb was doing. After about 3 minutes, her head rose and they moved. Barb then disappeared from sight again, and a few seconds later, her legs rose into the air. At that moment, he left the parking lot and headed home. He lived through what he knew for 2 weeks, not wanting to tell me, until finally he couldn't hold it in any longer. On the way home, I thought about the night Brandon said it happened. I remembered that I was in Baltimore solving a production problem. I called Barb at noon to talk to her, and she told me she was going out with the girls for drinks after work, so I wouldn't worry if I called and she didn't answer. I wondered if she did this every time, what Brandon saw when I left town. If that was the case, then she did it at least twice a month. It just didn't make sense to me. I saw absolutely nothing in Barb's attitude toward me that indicated dissatisfaction or loss of affection. We were married for 10 years, and I thought it was a good marriage, but obviously, I was wrong. One thing I knew for sure, I would figure it out. The first thing I had to do was find out for myself what was going on. I couldn't tell Barb what Brandon saw because it would just devolve into a shouting match, punctuated by things like, "I am your wife. Who the hell are you gonna believe, him or me?" Frankly, I was going to believe Brandon. He had no reason to lie to me. Unlike Barb, if, for some strange reason, Brandon had lied to me, it would have been easy enough to figure out. I would have given Barb more rope to hang herself with, and if she didn't, I would have taken a closer look at Brandon. I was supposed to make an inspection trip to our Anniston plant, but I rescheduled so Gary could make the trip. I agreed with my boss to take a week off and told him why, so that he could properly answer any calls Barb might make to the office. I then enlisted Gary's help. I knew he would help me because he had just gone through a nasty divorce after catching his wife in bed with another man. I explained the situation to him, and he said he would be happy to help. I bought a burner phone at a convenience store, and the only person I gave the number to was Gary. Monday morning, I kissed Barb goodbye, telling her I'd call her as soon as I checked into the hotel. I said I would see her in 4 days and left for the airport. At the airport, I left my car in the long-term parking lot and then went to Alamo and rented a mid-CZ sedan, and then went and found myself a motel room for 3 nights. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Gary called me and said that he had checked into room 416 at the downtown Marriott in my name. I parked down the street from where Barb was working when she got off work that evening and followed her. She headed straight home. I gave her an hour and then called her on my regular cell phone and told her where I was staying. If you call me and a stranger answers, don't hang up. There was a mix-up with our reservation. There's some kind of convention going on in town, and there weren't many rooms there, so Gary Williams and I are sharing a room. I'll contact you tomorrow. Love you, sweetheart. Bye. I stayed on the block until 10:15, and when by then she still hadn't come out of the house, I headed to my motel. I called her at noon the next day and reminded her that Wednesday was garbage collection day, and to remember to put the trash cans out on the curb. I'm having dinner with the CEO and production managers tonight, so if it's late, I probably won't call and wake you up. If you don't hear from me before 9, don't wait. I love you too. Bye-bye. That night I followed her again, and she went straight home and never came out again. I began to wonder if I had jumped to conclusions when I thought she was using my trips out of town to cheat on me. I only had 1 night before I was supposed to go home, and she went home and stayed home every night I watched. I didn't call her the next day at lunch. And at 5:30, Gary called me and said Barb had called and left a message for me at the front desk. I called her on a burner phone to find out what she wanted. Just wanted to let you know that I'm staying with the girls after work tonight and will probably be home late. I didn't want you to worry if you called and didn't get an answer. Be careful, honey. Take a taxi home if you drink too much. I'll be home tomorrow and we can pick up your car. That's why I love you, baby. Because you always think about me and my well-being. I love you. I love you too. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. When she came home from work, I followed her. She drove to the other side of town and stopped at the same bar where Brandon saw her. I had never been to a bar and didn't know its location, and I didn't want Barb to know I was following her, so I moved my car to where I could follow her car without her noticing me. I knew many of the girls Barb worked with, and as I sat watching the doors, I didn't see any of them appear. Just after dark, Barb went out, got into her car, and started it. I prepared to follow her, but all she did was drive the car to the back of the lot and park it in the darkest corner. She turned off the light and just sat there. About 5 minutes later, a couple of guys came out, walked up to the car and stood there for a few minutes talking, and then one man got into the car and drove off. The second man stood and watched until the car was out of sight, then turned and walked to the far end of the parking lot, where he got into Barb's car. She and Barb slid towards each other and began kissing. After about 5 minutes of cuddling, they both got out of the car, and I expected to see them go back to the bar, but what they did was sit in the back seat of Barbie's car. I know it sounds stupid, but up until this point, I had been telling myself that Brandon had it all wrong, that Barb loves me and wouldn't cheat on me. I was convinced that there was a reasonable explanation for everything, but the fact that she deliberately climbed into the back seat drove the denial right out of my head and heart. They started kissing again, and Barb slowly slid down until I couldn't see her anymore. I saw the man looking down at her, and even though I already knew everything I needed to know, I had some twisted need to actually see what Barb was doing. It wasn't enough for me to just know that Barb had sex with this guy. I should have seen it. I got out of my car and walked towards Barb's car, trying to stay so that the man wouldn't see me approaching them. As I got closer to them, I heard Barb moan. I stood up so that I could see what was happening in the car. Barb was naked from the waist down. He didn't even take off his pants. He just unzipped the zipper. The guy didn't talk, didn't scream or moan. He just continued his work. At that moment, I started clapping my hands and shouting, "Bravo, bravo, great performance. Wonderful first act." Barb looked up, saw me, and her face lost all its color. I've heard of faces turning pale, but this was the first time I'd seen it. "Great show, guys. I would like to stay for the second act, but I have some pressing personal matters to take care of." Barb was trying to get out from under the man, when I turned and walked back to my rental car. I was just pulling out of my parking spot when Barb finally managed to get out of her car and ran up to me. She asked me to wait when I slowed down. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed back to the motel. The next morning I drove to the airport, dropped off my rental car, and picked up mine from the long-term parking lot. I stopped by the office and Marcia, our receptionist, told me that Barb had called half a dozen times and said it was important that I call her at work as soon as I got the messages. I thanked her, went to my office, called the company attorney and asked him to recommend a good divorce lawyer, and then called the number he gave me. Luckily, the lawyer was able to see me that same day, and I made an appointment. Then I did whatever I thought I needed to do to cover my ass. I canceled all joint credit cards, colored local newspapers, and placed a notice in the legal department that I was no longer responsible for any debts incurred by Barbaroo and Mercer, nee Barnum. I went to the bank and took half of my checks and savings and took my name off all the accounts, leaving them in Barb's name only. That afternoon, I received some bad news. We lived in a perfect marriage, so everything was divided in half. It didn't matter to me, so I told him to go ahead and file a case. He told me he could fail the next day, and I asked him about the restraining order keeping Barb away from me in the house. He said it was hard to get a restraining order without a very good reason to get one, so I lied. I told him that Barb and her lover threatened to kill me when I caught them, and I was afraid that they would try to kill me to collect my life insurance. Okay, he said. A threat like that might speed up the case, but you'll have to prove it when we hold the hearing or it will be overturned. Everything is fine. As soon as I move out of the house, I'll give it up and we won't even have to have a hearing on it. How soon can this be done? I can be at the courthouse when it opens, and if you're willing to spend $200 to expedite the process, she'll have the papers by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Do it well. I arranged for him to call me as soon as Barb was notified and then returned to the office. Marcia was gone for the day, but she left 7 messages on my desk, all from Barb, all asking me to call her as soon as possible. I crumpled them up and threw them in the trash, then sat down at my desk and started looking through the ads for an apartment closer to work. I spent most of the next morning looking at the apartments I toured, and at 1:30 I signed a lease for one of them. At 3:10 I got a call that Barb had been notified. I rented a truck, bought some packing boxes, and drove to the house. At 4, the courier who had notified Barb came in and handed me a copy of the restraining order. It said that Barb could not come within 500 feet of me. A couple of my friends helped me, and by 5:15 I had everything I wanted out of the house, except my clothes, and loaded into the truck. I was busy loading them when Barb pulled into the driveway. She got out of the car and walked towards me, and I yelled at her to get back in her car and get away from the house before I called the police on her for violating the restraining order. This is stupid, Rob. We need to talk. No, we won't talk. Actions speak louder than words, and I've seen you in action. Now go away. Not until we talk. Okay, Barb, I gave you a chance. I took out my cell phone and turned it on to call the police, then went into the house and locked the door. Barb was banging on the door, demanding to be let in, when a police car pulled up to the entrance. I went outside and gave them my copy of the restraining order. They read it and then told Barb that she needed to move at least 500 feet away from the house. She protested, saying that this was also her home and she had the same right to be there as I did. Finally, the officer told her to get out or he would take her to the station. I stood there, hoping that she would continue to argue with him and he would take her away. But Barb had a sudden attack of smartness. She got into her car and drove to the end of the block. I thanked the officer for his quick arrival and then finished loading the truck and left the house. After first making sure Barb wasn't trying to spy on me, I drove to my new apartment and started moving in. I spent the weekend getting comfortable and then went back to work on Monday. I hadn't been at my desk for 2 minutes when Marcia popped her head through my office door and said Barb was online too. I really didn't want to talk to her, but I was being unfair to Marcia by making her answer all her calls and putting off talking to Barb, so I picked up the phone. Yes? Robbie, please talk to me. I have nothing to tell you, Barb, but I need to talk to you. Continue, I'm listening. I can't do this over the phone. Rob, people keep coming into the office. Come home, Rob. Please just come home. I'll cook dinner and we can sit and talk." "No, thanks. I have no home, and I see no reason to return to you." "Okay, pick a spot and I'll meet you there, but please, Rob, I need to talk to you. I don't really want to talk because it would be a waste of my time, but you can swing by my office when you're done with work. By then, everyone will have to leave. I'll give you 15 minutes, and that's all." She showed up at 10 minutes to 6. When she entered my office, I pointed to a chair and said, "Okay, Barb, what do you want?" That's what I don't want, Rob. I don't want a divorce. I didn't want a wife who picks up guys in bars and has sex with them in the back seats of parking lots, but I still have her. I'm sorry you saw this, Rob, but even so, it shouldn't be the reason for our divorce. You can't be serious about this. You cheat on me with other men and I should be okay with that? It's not other men, Rob. There is only one. I dated Jeff before I met you. I ran into him one of my evenings when I was walking with girls from work. I've been dating him for about 3 months. What? You knew him before you met me and that's why it's okay? Rob, I've been dating him for about 3 months. Did you notice any lack of affection towards you during this period? Was I less loving than I had been throughout our marriage? I love you, Rob, and I don't love Jeff. My meeting with Jeff didn't cost you anything, Rob, absolutely nothing. I only see him when you're out of town. I never came to you after I was with him. Then I guess it's okay. What I'm trying to convey to you is that my meeting with Jeff didn't hurt us at all. I'm not disrespecting you by coming to you fresh from Jeff. I don't sneak behind you to see him when you're at home. The point is, Rob, you're my man. I love you, honey, and you're the only one I want to grow old with. Sorry, Barb, but I don't see things the way you do. You say you don't disrespect me, but I say you disrespected me in the extreme when you cheated on me with another man. I can't come to terms with this. I can't equate your claims that you love me, want to grow old with me, and that I'm your man with the fact that you're having sex with some other guy. It's simply not calculable. If I really were your man, you wouldn't be dating Jeff in the first place. And I don't buy you having fun with Jeff simply because you dated him before you met me. If that were the case, I would have to accept the fact that sooner or later, you would have slept with half a dozen other guys you had sex with before you met me. God, Rob, I would never do that to you. You're already doing this to Jeff. Rob, I dated Jeff because he's fantastic. Oh, really? I think that explains everything and makes everything right. Listen, baby, I love you and I never wanted to hurt you. I don't want to hurt her now, but I have to be honest here if I want to have any chance of saving my marriage. I have sex with Jeff because he gives me something you don't have. You are a wonderful man, a fantastic husband in every way except one. You're terrible in bed, you're gentle and affectionate, but you don't seem to care about sex at all. Tuesdays and Saturdays, boring sex like clockwork, once and then you roll over and fall asleep, leaving me to get up, go to the bathroom, and masturbate to come. I need something more. When I ran into Jeff during my night out with the girls, I remembered how we spent time together and how he would entertain me 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times a night. I wondered if he could still do this, and when he started hitting on me, I went to a motel with him. It was just sex, Rob. There was no love, no affection, just regular hard sex. He gave me what you didn't have. It was just sex, Rob. This has not diminished my love for you one iota. If it was between you and no sex life or Jeff and great sex, I chose you, Rob. God, Barb, I'm so happy to know this. Let me ask you something. When I came home from work and you didn't feel like cooking, and you said, "Can we go out to eat?" Did I invite you out? Yes, you did. When you came up to me and said you had a hard week and wanted to go somewhere, have fun, and let off some steam, did I invite you somewhere? Yes, Rob, it is. Actually, didn't I usually do what you asked me to do? Almost always. Then why in the name of all that is holy didn't you tell me, Rob, my sex life sucks, and then ask me to do something about it? You never complained, so how was I supposed to know? My sex drive isn't that strong, and Tuesday and Saturday were fine with me, and you agreed with that. If I fed you hot dogs every night for a week and you got tired of eating hot dogs, would you tell me? You'd love to have sex with anyone, but talk to me about something as important as your sex life? Oh no, I can't do that. I'll just go and find some other guy. At least it's nice to know that if you had a choice, you would choose me over Jeff. But you don't have a choice, Barb. And I do. And since I have to choose between living with my unfaithful wife or divorcing her, I choose divorce. I gave you a chance to talk, and now it's over between us. Please don't bother me anymore. Anything else you need to say, you can tell me through my lawyer. Please go away. Rob, please don't do this. I love you, baby. I really love you. Go, Barb. Just go away. Tears streamed down her face, but she stood up and left without another word. The divorce was final last week, and I haven't seen or spoken to Barb in the last 6 months. I miss her. I really miss you. I still love her and believe I always will. If I had just started my car and driven away when I saw her getting into the back seat of her car with Jeff, and then told her about it when she got home, we might have been able to work things out. But I didn't leave, and there was no way I could have stayed with her after watching what she did in the back seat.